Jamaal Richards, and I've been a Muslim for more than 20 years. The Jamaican community is a very God-fearing community. The younger community, we basically would just do the things that we wanted to do. Coming quite close to the time that I reverted to Islam, I found that most of the people that I got on really well with were Muslims. It was just always like a very warm and generous community. So my brother-in-law, he came to the house one day and he had a copy of Malcolm X's autobiography, and he had made an intention to read this book. It really drew me in. I gave dawah to my two brother-in-laws. My mother, when I told her that I had become Muslim, one thing she said to me at the time was, be careful. When you become Muslim, whether you tell your family or not, they have to see that change in you. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Jamaal Richards, and I've been a Muslim for more than 20 years. Before Islam, I was born and raised a Christian. My life was, I would say, quite loose in terms of the lifestyle that I led. So, for example, the typical things that one would do, which would be indulging in like the alcohol, drugs, and obviously music and so on. There came to a point in my life where even with the alcohol, I was really kind of overindulging. And although I was never considered an alcoholic, I think that my lifestyle was quite probably precarious, you might say. So coming from a Jamaican background, the Jamaican community is a very God-fearing community. The younger community, we basically would just do the things that we wanted to do, which would just not really involve religion at all. So anything that would get in the way of that would be problematic for us, basically. So in my family, although, my mother, for example, she was a devout Christian, is a devout Christian, but other than sort of going to church, being forced to go to church as a child, within the household, it was not a strong Christian household at all. So, for example, we weren't forced to do things like praying and, stuff like that. We just lived as Christians. It was just a given that we were Christians. But, I think most Christians do not involve, regular religious activities within the home. I'd get sent to Sunday school and I would walk to the front of the church and just sort of think like, yeah, I got better things to do than this. So I would just basically disappear. And, being Jamaican, if my mom ever found out, then, I was no stranger to explanations, as it were. Yeah. Before reverting to Islam, coming quite close to the time that I reverted to Islam, I found that most of the people that I got on really well with were Muslims, and especially a neighbor who didn't actually give me dawah, but I really enjoyed spending time with that family. And the mother of that family, she was an amazing, wonderful lady, auntie, and always very, very generous. And that's what I found about Muslims, that, it was just always like a very warm and generous community. There were two kind of angles that it came from. The first being, I had some friends, very, very good friends. One of them who now is, a presenter on Islam channel, Khalil Muhammad. So he was one angle and he used to give me dawah. But at the same time, my brother-in-law, he came to the house one day. He was like into his rap and he used to walk around everywhere sort of rapping and all that kind of stuff. So my brother-in-law, he came to the house one day and he had a copy of Malcolm X's autobiography. And he had made an intention to read this book. But what happened is he ended up leaving it at the house and he never read it. So it was sitting there. And so one day I thought, okay, I'm going to read this book myself. So I started to read it and it really drew me in. But whilst that was happening, at the same time, as I said, I was getting dawah from Khalil Muhammad and my other friends. But it was really the book, and it was really sort of just understanding Malcolm X and understanding sort of that, within the Black history, there was a lot of Islam. And I think that's what really kind of drew me in. because of lifestyle, that was the reason why I didn't have an interest. Like, so for example, I was not God fearing, but God aware. And, and I was quite happy to accept that there was a creator, but I feel that at a point in my life that, I was the type that had the understanding that almost like God is a friend. And it's a very naive kind of way to look at it. But, you sort of think like, yeah, all right, God, yeah, how you doing? That kind of thing. And, I acknowledge you, but I'm just doing me, and there was a lot of that really, in my life. But it was only later on when I started to realize that, he was much more significant and much more important than just a friend. He was someone who was more deserving of my obedience and my worship than my own mother. I started to think more deeply about Islam when I got more engrossed into Malcolm X's autobiography, and then that book led on to more books on Black activism and Black history. And I also got connected with an organization which they were modeled off of the Nation of Islam, but they were actually Sunni Muslims. But their whole model was really like the economical structure, the discipline structure. It was all Nation of Islam. I became a part of that organization. It wasn't a named organization. It was just a group of brothers who, literally were trying to do, better within the community. I started to practice Islam 2 years before I took my Shahada. Probably considered myself as being a Muslim, but didn't take the Shahada. So everything that I did, my whole approach to life was as a Muslim. It was more like taking a step closer, but not actually taking my Shahada. It took me a long time to take my Shahada. I was living with my partner at the time, and I knew that when I was going to become a Muslim, I knew there was going to be a problem. And that was one of the things that actually stopped me from taking my Shahada. And it was my beloved teacher at the time. He was very, very well known. His name was Muhammad Khaja. And he was such a sort of wise person. He's no longer with us. May Allah grant him Jannah. I mean. And he was the one that said, I said to him, I can't take my Shahada because I'm new with my partner and blah, blah, blah. It means that we're not going to be, halal. It's going to be haram. And, the best advice that you could ever give was you got to take these things a step at a time. Don't worry about that now. Obviously, once you take your Shahada, everything will fall into place. I think I was just comfortable with the journey that I was taking. And along the journey, along that route, alhamdulillah, I gave dawah to my 2 brother-in-laws, and they all both became Muslim before I did. So it was kind of a bit of a strange one. So first brother-in-law, he came home one day and he heard that we were been talking about Islam, and his conviction was so strong that, he came, and I think it was just maybe one sitting, was talking to him about Islam. It really appealed to him, and he just went off and he went to a masjid and he literally just took his Shahada. So he just came back and says, I'm Muslim now.
The work of supporting new Muslims continues year-round, and you can be part of it. Over the past 5 years, iERA has been blessed at being able to introduce Islam to more than 400,000 people. These individuals need our constant support as they navigate their new faith. Your contribution of £50 to support one new Muslim gives them essential guidance and support. Click the link below, share the video, and let's go back to that interview, shall we?
And so, yeah, that was like, okay, so that was it. He was a Muslim. And I think shortly afterwards, that's when my other brother-in-law, he'd sort of decided, okay, he was ready as well. So then he took his Shahada. And for myself, I was obviously there. I was praying. I would go to the mosque on occasions. Didn't know how to pray, obviously, but I'd go to the mosque and I would sort of do the moves. When I decided that I was going to take my Shahada, regarding my family, I have my sister, for example, she's a very, very devout Christian, and she also is a missionary, or she has done sort of missions in Africa and stuff like this. So she was always going to be my biggest, I suppose, opposition. And what happened is that my mother, for example, when I told her that I had become Muslim, because of in the media, because of the stick that Islam gets in the media, the one thing she said to me at the time was, "Be careful," and that was it. And she accepted. I'm going to be called Jamaal now. And, at first, obviously, she found it hard, but then eventually that was it. I'm Jamaal, and most of my family, the same. But my sister, she was a bit more, what's the word? She refused to, not refuse, but she just, used to continue calling me by my old name. But then eventually, like years later, it's Jamaal to her as well. And I've always said it's very important that when you become Muslim, whether you tell your family or not, they have to see that change in you. And they have to realize that when you say to them, like, what do you think of me over the last 6 months? And they'll sort of say, wow, you've been you've been amazing, you've been great, you've done this, you've done whatever. And then it's so much easier to then sort of drop it and just say, that's because 6 months ago I became a Muslim. And even though they would still be sort of like, oh, whatever, I don't agree with, but then you sort of say, yeah, but, you've seen what it's done for me and what it's done for us as a family and what it's done for you. So how can you resist it? And that was what was important for me. Before I actually became a Muslim, I reverted. I was still doing all the things, like, for example, I was still drinking. I was still smoking, drugs, cigarettes, and so on. And, so when the time came for me to take my Shahada, the things that I gave up straight away was the alcohol. So the hardest change for me was the fact that before I was Muslim, I was a musician and I spent my whole life with music. And so that was the hardest thing for me, knowing that it was something I wasn't going to be able to do anymore. And that took quite a long time, actually. It took a very, very long time. When I was smoking, all my life, when I was trying to give up smoking cigarettes, I could never do it. And most people tried it, and it was really, really hard. But when I said to my brothers that, I'm going to give up smoking when Ramadan comes, and they were like, yeah, well, Jamaal, Ramadan is like in 2 weeks' time, because I didn't know. It's like, wow, I've got to give up. Like, I made a promise. So it was like, okay, I made a decision that I was going to give up. And when it actually came and I had given up cigarettes just before Ramadan, at first I thought to myself psychologically, this is like, I couldn't do this before. How am I going to do it now? And so much so that, these incense sticks, the smoke, I used to start sucking that in, thinking like, oh, anything to survive. But when Ramadan came, it was like really so unbelievable that I literally just gave it up and the urge was gone. Before I became Muslim, I used to have a lot of friends that used to come to my house every single day, and they literally never stayed away. And that's no exaggeration. Like, so they'd turn up probably late afternoon, and would spend the whole entire day with us. Like many people. Like I used to have lots and lots of friends, but we used to do all the wrong things together. So like we'd drink, we would smoke, and that's all we used to do. And what was really funny is one day after I became Muslim, they came to my house, and at the door I sort of said, yeah, I'm a Muslim now, but I think they took it the wrong way. And so I'm Muslim now, and they never came back to my house again. So even though I still see them, even to this day I still see them, but there was something that happened. I'm not too sure. Maybe it's the way that I said it. I don't think I said it in a bad way, but to be fair, it was probably the best thing that could ever happen to me. I think whether they were afraid of become Muslim themselves, or they felt that it was not appropriate for them to be around us anymore, Allah knows best. But yeah, I think we were always good with each other, so even to this day I see them and we have good conversations. My partner at the time, she wasn't Muslim, but her brothers she saw them both coming into Islam. And none of us put any pressure on her. You know, a whole year went by actually after my Shahada. And during that time, she was looking into it for herself. And I think that was very important. You know, obviously it's nice for someone to guide you, but it's important to take that step by yourself. And one day we went to this event. It was an Islamic sort of event. And then someone came up to me and said, Jamaal, your partner's about to take Shahada. You know, so we were running over, myself and my brothers, and we literally just witnessed the Shahada taking place. And again, it was really good because we knew that there's more chance of, you know, it being cemented when that person has taken their own steps and they do it, you know, on their own. Unfortunately, in my own family, nobody else has become Muslim. My brother came very close. But unfortunately, he didn't, and that wasn't as a result of me giving him dawah, because it was very difficult dawah with my family. But he came close because he was working for someone who was a Muslim, albeit that he wasn't actually on the right path, this person. But my brother had no idea of this. So my plan was, like, let him become a Muslim and, then eventually, I would step in. But yeah, there was no one else had become Muslim until much, much, much later. I do have now Muslims in my family, but again, their own paths. But they've all done the same thing. They became Muslim and they came straight to me. And obviously, it's just been really nice sort of overlooking them. Some of them actually have kept it undercover, so it's not something that I would actually reveal who they are. But very significant people within my family have become Muslim. I think the one advice I'd give to someone who is giving dawah to a non-Muslim is it's important to understand the background of the person that you're speaking to, and also to understand how to communicate with them, which doesn't mean that you do need to have a little bit of emotional intelligence, because no one likes to have their faith insulted. And even though they may feel that something within their belief is weak, if you insult it, then they will suddenly feel that they need to protect it, they need to defend it. So this is the reason why, with a bit of emotional intelligence, understand that when you speak to someone, you should be very understanding. You should be, when you speak to them, you ask them questions, and you should acknowledge. You should be an active listener, and you should always give them time to speak. And then hopefully when that happens, when you then pause and you give them the message, you'll find that they'll be very, very receptive of what you're relaying to them. And they'll walk away feeling actually quite a good feeling with that conversation that you've had with them. And this is very important. One message that I'd give to someone who is about to take Shahada and is thinking about becoming a Muslim is the reason why you are taking that step is because you know within yourself that Islam is the truth. And the only thing that's stopping you, the only obstacles that are stopping you are things like family, work, relationships, all this type of thing. But that conviction that you have that Allah is one and Allah is worthy of worship will be enough to make you understand that you take that step first of all, don't let anything get in the way of that, and then worry about everything afterwards. Just take your Shahada and everything else will fall into place. Continue your life until you can find a way to let your family know that this is what's happened, that you've made that significant change. And that's what's very important, just to literally take the Shahada first, and then everything else will fall into place afterwards.